In 1998, wrestling was really getting out of the Bret Hart era and getting more towards the Attitude Era, where there were more bending of the rules, bending of what was the norm of entertainment with wrestling and what was okay or not okay with the media. As you know, nowadays, a lot of the things that were uh, shown on TV back then would probably not, would definitely not be allowed on TV today. Um, there's a lot of great storylines by a lot of great wrestlers, mid carders, all of that. During this time, they utilized a lot of the talent that they had on the roster from the mid card down. It seemed like every feud meant something back then. And a lot of these feuds that are occurring at Unforgiven 1998, the In Your House show, were 3 months building after WrestleMania. I mean, it was a very good pay per view with a lot of meaning, headlined by a huge match, two huge matches really. Dude loving Stone Cold for the title because that's the title match, but the biggest one was Undertaker and Kane's Inferno match, the rematch of WrestleMania, um, a big match that had been hyped up tremendously. But we'll get to that. The first match that was on the card was Farooq, Ken Shamrock, and Steve Blackman taking on the Nation of Domination, which included The Rock, D'Lo Brown, and Mark Henry. And if I'm not mistaken, it was Kama, aka the Godfather, who was the the manager for them. This was a good match. There was a lot of meaning behind this. Ken Shamrock and The Rock had a tremendous feud going on. In my opinion, one of the greatest intercontinental title feuds of all time. They had a lot of good chemistry together, and Shamrock also had a big name for himself. Farooq had just been kicked out of the Nation of Domination for not helping The Rock at WrestleMania when Shamrock choked or broke The Rock's ankle or whatever, and as a result, gave gave plenty of disrespect to The Rock. So The Rock at the time, a tremendous heel, was not having that, kick Farouk out. So they had a great rivalry going on. And Steve Blackman was being used as kind of Ken Shamrock's partner. They didn't really have a gimmick for him yet. He wasn't quite the hardcore champion that we know him to be later in like 99, 2000. Very raw talent at the time, but a young talent. So Farouk ends up doing the power driver on The Rock, if I'm not mistaken. And, I like that the Nation was putting over this team because it opens the door for a longer feud, which was already a long feud and what was a great feud. Farouk deserved to be put over at the time. He's put his major dues into wrestling at that time, and it made Ken Shamrock look a lot stronger as well. I really like how The Rock at this time put a lot of people over because he had so much heat that he stayed relevant no matter what. And he was the Intercontinental Champion at the time. And, I mean, it really did a good job of putting another team over. That's something that you don't really see much in wrestling nowadays. Like, a lot of the younger talents like Bray Wyatt, all of them get, squashed by Cena. And it's pretty... It shows differences in the trust levels that Vince might have for certain wrestlers. Second match was Triple H against Owen Hart. Triple H was going at WrestleMania. Chyna had interfered by throwing dust in the face of Sergeant Slaughter while she was handcuffed to him as stipulations of the match, and as a result, she would have to be harnessed above a cage during the match. She eventually got free. It was a good match. Owen and Triple H, I guess I should say first, always put on good matches together. Owen Hart, a great talent. Two perfect opponents for the European title. He ended up putting the pedigree on Triple H, did his very best to win. Chyna ended up getting out of the cage and pulled out and helped Triple H get a pedigree and pull out the victory. Solid match, great match, honestly. Chyna and Triple H had really good chemistry together when right before DX formed. and even when DX was together. And Owen Hart, great. He might be a little bit boring on the mic, but I think he was a little bit underrated personally on the mic. So I think it was definitely good to see how he could really pull it out and just really should make his wrestling work, like to tell the story. Unlike a lot of wrestlers today who try to just work it on the mic. The next match was the new Midnight Express, which was Bombtastic Bob and Bodacious Bart Gunn and Hardcore Holly later on with Jim Cornette against the Rock and Roll Express, which was Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson for the NWA Tag Team titles. At the time, the NWA was merging with the WWF, which is a very underrated thing. For hardcore fans, they know the significance of that. For casual fans, it's just probably a meh on the Attitude Era. But it really was a good match. The Midnight Express was the NWA World Tag Team Champs for a long time. Jim Cornette really managed them for a long time and then turned on them for this young tag team who ended up winning the match. And it was good because this was a young tag team that could have done a lot. Bart Gunn's best known for winning the Brawl for All before getting knocked out by Butterbean, and Hardcore Holly is basically known for his hardcore gimmick, tough as nails, tag team champs with the Hollies, all that stuff. So it was a good match. So then we had Luna and Sable in the evening gown match. Luna won. That appetized the fans. That did what it needed to do. So then you had the New Age Outlaws against LOD 2000 with Sonny. At the time, the New Age Outlaws had just defeated Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack for the tag titles again after losing them at WrestleMania, which I think was great for the two hardcore legends to get their due. But they were taking on a team that had just revamped themselves. The Legion of Doom 2000 at WrestleMania had Sonny as a manager. Were looking great. They had just been embarrassed a couple months ago by the New Age Outlaws and then lost to them. They had a tremendous rivalry, new versus old school. The rematch, still a lot of beef. Both teams could get over. The Legion of Doom, very good on the mic, as always, very underrated. Got the best of the New Age Outlaws, but ended up losing the match over some controversy, as always. But the New Age Outlaws, big reason why they're one of the best tag team titles, or one of the best tag team champs of all time, is because they were able to defeat legends like this, and the legends were were willing to put them over. Great entertainers. They joined DX shortly afterwards, and did a very good job of just setting the table for the Attitude Era to go further, because the New Age Outlaws were huge parts of that. Very underrated. So next we got the Inferno match. Undertaker versus Kane with Paul Bearer. And, honestly, I'm going to talk a little bit about this. This is my favorite two wrestlers of all time, storyline, or like gimmick-wise. My favorite feud of all time, for sure. Kane and Undertaker have tremendous chemistry. They had just gotten off that WrestleMania match, that 7-month, you were waiting for them to fight. They finally fought. Undertaker somehow won. Next thing you know, it gets real personal. And this part of the feud is largely undermined due to the fact that WrestleMania was such a big match for them. But, Paul Bearer and Kane had dug up the grave of Undertaker's parents, had thrown Undertaker into it. Kane had set on fire the grave. Paul Bearer made his famous "I have a dream" speech. Tremendous promo that is. You guys need to look that up if you haven't seen it yet. You can see it on BOD22's page, I think his name is. But, their match here was just fantastic. Kane and Undertaker did a great job just looking. They're just a mirror of each other, and you look at this scary Undertaker, and somehow his little brother is just, they did, it was a good match. Vader ended up interfering. Undertaker kicked Kane. He lost balance and his hand fell into the fire. Started a short-lived feud with Vader into the next month for the mask versus mask match, and it gave Undertaker a chance to go, further for the title. So it gave both of them a lot of what's it called? It gave them both a lot of push for their eventual main event feuds with Stone Cold later on in 1998, which is really when the Attitude Era kicks off and is at its peak. So that was a good match. So then we have Dude Love and Stone Cold Steve Austin for the WWF title, where Dude Love ends up winning the match by disqualification. It was a good match. Dude Love was, a little bit, Cactus Jack had just been a face. It shows how flexible, Mick Foley is. Just being able to be that great face with Cactus Jack. The fans literally loved him. Loved him against the New Age Outlaws. And, he then turned against Stone Cold, and, the fans hated him. A large part of that is probably because of, Vince McMahon. And, to be honest, Dude Love was one of my least favorite characters to face Stone Cold in these next two pay-per-views. Stone Cold, Dude Love is a good heel, and he played the part well, but even Vince said himself that the only reason it was Dude was because, Vince didn't have anybody else to do it. Or either I think it was Mick that said it in his book. Regardless, they put on a good match. Stone Cold got the W, and it interluded into their second match at the next pay-per-view, where, the odds were stacked against Dude Love big time, or against Stone Cold big time, with Vince being the referee, Pat Patterson being the announcer, and Gerald Briscoe, one of the Briscoes, being the bell ringer. So, they had a good match. This pay-per-view is definitely overall a must-see when it comes to the Attitude Era. Simply, if not just for Stone Cold to see the reaction of the fans and how much they love him, but for just the matches themselves. Kane and Undertaker's Inferno match is probably one of the best matches of all time. Triple H and Owen Hart always put on very good matches. That match is, I think, 12 minutes, 13 minutes long. The Nation of Domination match had a lot of heat behind it if you care to look at the storylines, SmackDown, Raw before that. And then, it's just the New Age Outlaws and LOD, it's just a stacked card. If you look at wrestling nowadays, you wouldn't dream to see a card like this. Come on, the second match that's out there is Triple H against Owen Hart. The very opener has Farooq, Shamrock, The Rock, D'Lo. It's just stacked. So I definitely recommend this. It's a very it's a very important part to the Attitude Era, and it's integrated into a lot of hardcore fans' minds. So I hope you enjoy it. And the very next pay-per-view, if I'm not mistaken, will be Over the Edge in your house. So hope you guys enjoy, and subscribe below.